Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about how to tell if somebody is a poser. So let's get into it. Well, the exact question in question here was basically that someone, what are some red flags that indicate that someone relishes the idea of being a programmer more than actually being productive as a programmer? And that's a very specific one, but I think I can answer this. So it's actually quite easy to figure out if somebody is a poser. It's actually very, very easy. And I would say, this is kinda universal in any type of academic field that requires knowledge or specialist knowledge in some fashion. You see, one of my favorite things well, I wouldn't say favorites, because I get deeply, deeply embarrassed when I meet people like this, and I'm sorry to say that I have met people like this many times. And the worst part is when it's what I call a blah blah person. It's a person who works within IT, but no, actually, I usually call them no-stack developers. So a no-stack developer is just a person working in IT who knows some basic usage of a computer but doesn't actually do any development. It can be sales or something like that. A no-stack developer. And the worst part is when they try to use words that they don't understand themselves. I had this. I was at a party at Spotify here in Gothenburg, and during that event. I met a recruiter, and she just came over and sat down at our table, and we had a discussion. And when she was doing her pitch and all of that good stuff, because programmers are in demand, so having five programmers kind of intoxicated talking about code is a perfect environment to make some pitches about the stuff that they use at their company, right? And we were talking, and the specific discussion was about Neo4j, and we were talking about graph databases and the benefits to that versus relational databases and some of the considerations that needs to be made here. And so we asked her whether or not, if they had any usage for graph databases, got it, within their company. And she immediately just kind of went, well, yeah, of course we use graph databases. And I mean, we try to, be super agile and things of that, because being agile is important to us. We also like to use quite a lot of jQuery. And I kind of went, well, okay, so what does jQuery? We want to be agile, so we use jQuery to accommodate our needs so that we can stay remain competitive within the marketplace. And then she kind of just went on, and we just sat there, and you could very clearly hear that she had absolutely no idea what she was saying. It's kind of like I've heard many, many times where a person will just throw in for no reason, talking about scalability and using microservices, especially when they don't even know what a microservice is, and then they talk about Docker, and they know the trend words, but they don't actually know what these words mean. So that's a very easy tell. These are people who aren't even developers, who I guess just want to be presented somehow as someone with technical experience, because guys, the biggest, darkest secret, which is the funniest part about IT, is that as a developer, if you know the lingo, if you know the technical terms, like when you work in IT, you may be the person who is writing the code, but you're also the most respected individual within a technical discussion because you know the most. My sales coworkers, they bring me in, and they bring my other coworkers in for discussions when they have clients, because one, if you have an engineer who sits down and can explain how the system is going to work and actually does know all the stuff, that brings a lot of trust to the conversation. But then you also, as an engineer, as I said, you kind of know what all this stuff is about. So you can very clearly hear when somebody's just pretending to know. And there's even another tier to this. These are non-technical people, or as I said, no-stack developers who use this in order to enhance or make themselves appear more technical than they are. But then there are people who are actually trying to be, who are actual programmers who just try to inflate the perception that people have of them being an expert. And this is not just for programmers. This is for any field. These people who learn shallow facts. I see this especially in people who study history. things of this nature. Because what the beautiful part about history, and you can very clearly, in my world, you can very clearly see if somebody is more interested in being perceived as being smart as opposed of actually being smart. They memorize facts and they just pull out facts in conversation and try to talk as if, because their encyclopedic knowledge of something is something that they truly believe is going to make them perceived as being more intelligent. And there are some people who actually fall for this bluff, where they think that just because you can quote a bunch of years to me or like a bunch of battles or things of this nature, that you actually are intelligent. But it's actually not. You just memorized a bunch of stuff that I can read on Wikipedia. If you really want to impress on somebody, you should be able to reason about the things that you learn, to actually have creative thought regarding and like considerations to your own theories regarding certain things, how certain things affect other things. That's the sort of stuff that indicates that you actually have thought about things. And in programming, it's the same thing. My favorite one is that the posters usually, they talk a lot about tools. They usually talk about what's trendy, what's cool, and they talk, and you can, if you have a deeper understanding, you can very clearly hear or figure out if this is just a poster by asking more in-depth questions about the tool that they are talking about, because they will usually promote the same damn things all over the place. I've seen this many times on the internet. People would talk about microservices and I can immediately hear that they don't even know what the microservice is. They think that any service, just any service, is a microservice. They don't even understand what the term comes from and like what makes us, like what's the difference between a SOA architecture and a microservice architecture. And then they talk about SPA frameworks, they talk about all the benefits of server-side rendering and stuff like that. And then I asked, okay, but what are the considerations to make between server-side rendering and just having it all client-side, or maybe even doing a native server-side rendered application, or an application that just focuses on that without the SPA. They have no idea because they never built it. They don't know, but they talk as if they know all of these things. And they like to draw, as I said, it's all about dropping names around tooling. And as you can probably imagine, that's the same thing that people do when they want to be perceived as cool or hip. They name drop people, important people that they know, or important things that they have done. You get this sensation from them that they're trying to impress you, that they take pride in the fact that they know things about IT. And usually the people who actually know their shit, they don't even bother enough to start blabbing about all these tools unless there's a genuine interest in the room to talk about that stuff. And usually the conversation is a lot more deeper than just dropping some very shallow terms that relate to a tool and some, if I can Google your answer and find it on a blog within like 5 minutes, then it's very unlikely that it's something that you came up with yourself. So what I want you to take away from this is that spotting a poser within programming is usually as simple as listening to the words that they use. If they use a bunch of different references to different tools and stuff of this nature, but anytime you ask them something a little bit more in-depth, they kind of get a little bit uncertain or vague on how they're going to answer it. They can't really give you anything concrete. That's usually a poser. It's the same, as I said, it's the same thing with any academics. Posers are usually the people who take the time to learn a lot of different things regarding the subject in like almost a skin deep knowledge. They have almost no in-depth knowledge, and then they just use that knowledge as a way for themselves to be noticed in a conversation or in a group of people. And you're always going to have these sorts of people, but for the most part, which I think is kind of funny, if you really want to, when you actually know your stuff, it's actually very easy to deflate you can pop their balloon immediately. I've never had this problem with, I have coworkers who, not coworkers, I have friends who have coworkers who have people like that around. And usually they talk quite a lot when I'm not in the room, I'm told. But as soon as we sit down at a pub or something like that, they just kind of very quickly start to notice that there's someone more experienced who actually knows their stuff in the room, and they get very quiet very quickly because now they're afraid. They're afraid that their blabbing about different tools will end up with them saying something that is incorrect, and then I will correct them and they will lose face. And that's a way for you to stop this sort of behavior. If you make them lose face, they get quiet really quickly. Have a great day.